He didn't care that everyone was watching. The bank was silent, frozen in shock, as the CEO shoved his pregnant wife so hard that she hit the marble floor. Gasps echoed, people rushed forward, yet the man stood tall, arrogant, as if nothing had happened. But what he didn't know was that the bank manager, an older man quietly standing in the corner, was watching with burning eyes. And this wasn't just any manager. This was her uncle, a man whose wealth and power made the arrogant CEO look like a beggar. What happened next would change everything. The fall was hard. Her hands instinctively reached out to protect her stomach, her face pale with terror. A sharp cry tore through the bank's cold air. For a moment, it seemed the world had stopped. Every pair of eyes glued to the woman on the ground, the expensive pearl necklace around her neck snapping and scattering across the polished floor. People hesitated, unsure if they should step forward. After all, this wasn't just any couple. That man, the one who had shoved her, was Daniel Reed, a ruthless CEO known for building his empire through intimidation, fear, and merciless ambition. His name carried weight in the city. His glare alone was enough to silence a boardroom. And now that same glare scanned the bank lobby, daring anyone to move closer. "Get up," Daniel barked at his wife, his voice echoing off the walls. "Don't make a scene." But she couldn't get up. The pain in her side was unbearable, and the terrified eyes of strangers made her cheeks burn with shame. From the corner of the room, a man in a perfectly pressed navy suit stepped forward. His silver hair caught the light, his expression unreadable. The bank staff stiffened at his presence. This was Henry Cross, the bank's manager. To most, he was simply a respected figure who had been in finance for decades. But to this woman on the floor, he was family. Henry had raised her like his own after her parents died. He had walked her to school, paid for her education, and protected her when no one else would. He had been her rock. And though he looked like a humble banker, his true fortune was a secret known only to a few powerful men. Henry was the hidden trillionaire, a man whose financial reach extended across continents. But to Daniel, Henry was just another middle-aged manager. Henry's eyes narrowed, though his voice remained calm. "Mr. Reed," he said slowly, each word deliberate, "you will step away from her." Daniel let out a cold laugh. "And who are you to tell me what to do with my wife?" The word wife dripped with possession, as if she were nothing more than property. Henry's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he crouched down beside the woman, gently helping her sit up. His hand was steady, his presence protective. She clutched his sleeve, relief washing over her tear-streaked face. "Uncle," she whispered weakly. The word cut through the silence like a blade. A ripple went through the room. Bank tellers exchanging confused glances, customers whispering under their breath. Daniel's smirk faltered. "Uncle?" Daniel's eyes darted between his wife and Henry. "What did you just call him?" he demanded. Henry finally rose to his full height, his calm composure now laced with authority. "You heard her," he said firmly. "I am her uncle. And you, Daniel, just made the worst mistake of your life." Daniel scoffed, trying to mask the sudden unease creeping into his chest. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Henry's gaze was icy, unwavering. "Yes. And do you have any idea who I am?" For the first time, Daniel hesitated. Something about Henry's tone, so assured, so fearless, made him falter. This wasn't the tone of an ordinary man. This was the tone of someone who had nothing to fear. The silence grew heavier, broken only by the sound of scattered pearls rolling across the floor. And in that silence, something shifted. Daniel realized this wasn't going to end the way he expected. But what he didn't know yet, what no one in that lobby knew, was that this confrontation would unravel secrets darker than anyone could imagine. Secrets about money, power, betrayal, and blood. The fall was just the beginning. Daniel's smirk returned, but it was thinner now, forced. He squared his shoulders, looming over his trembling wife as if his size alone could reassert control. "Listen, old man," he sneered, "stay out of this. This is between me and my wife. Family matters don't need outsiders meddling in." The word outsider made Henry's lips curl ever so slightly. Outsider? He had fed this girl when she had no one. He had watched her grow into the woman Daniel had so easily crushed beneath his pride. He had sacrificed quietly, so she would never know the depth of his wealth or the enemies who feared him. And now, this arrogant man dared to call him an outsider? The pregnant woman winced, clutching her stomach. Henry's eyes flicked down, sharp with concern. He crouched again, speaking gently. "How bad is the pain, child?" Tears brimmed in her eyes. She shook her head, afraid to speak. She had learned silence from years with Daniel. Every protest, every word back, every flicker of defiance had been punished with coldness, belittlement, or worse. Silence had become her shield. But silence wouldn't save her this time. Henry turned his gaze upward, locking eyes with Daniel. "You shoved a pregnant woman," he said, his voice low but filled with steel. "Your own wife. In public." Daniel scoffed, spreading his arms theatrically as though addressing the watching crowd. "Oh, please, don't be so dramatic." She tripped. "People like you always twist things." A murmur rippled through the lobby. Some believed him. After all, he was the powerful CEO, his reputation untouchable. Others weren't so sure. They had seen the violence in his push, the cruelty in his eyes. Henry didn't argue. He didn't need to. Instead, he slipped his phone from his pocket and tapped the screen. A soft chime confirmed a recording had begun. Daniel's expression darkened. "What do you think you're doing?" "Ensuring," Henry said evenly, "that there will be evidence. Evidence that no amount of money or lies can erase." Daniel laughed bitterly. "You think a recording will scare me? Do you have any idea how many judges and officials are on my payroll? How many journalists write what I tell them to? I can bury this story before it breathes." His arrogance dripped with truth. He wasn't lying. Daniel Reed had built his empire not just with business deals, but with corruption. He owned headlines, bent politicians to his will, and bought silence with checks that never bounced. He had lived untouchable for years. But Henry Cross was not like other men. Henry's calm didn't waver. His thumb pressed another command on the phone, and in an instant the recording was sent, not to the press, not to the police, but directly to his network. A group of powerful allies across the globe, men and women who owed him favors, who moved mountains at his word. Daniel didn't know it yet, but the world he controlled was far smaller than the one Henry commanded. Daniel's wife whispered weakly, her voice breaking through the tension. "Uncle, please don't." But Henry silenced her gently with a hand on her shoulder. "No more silence," he said. "Not today." Daniel's face twisted with rage. He stepped closer, towering over Henry. "You're making a mistake, old man. I could buy and sell this entire bank before you blink." Henry's eyes sharpened. "Try me." The words were simple, but the weight behind them made Daniel falter again. There was something in Henry's stare, a depth of power Daniel couldn't measure. The lobby had gone still, everyone holding their breath. No one dared move. No one dared interrupt. It wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It felt like a battle between giants, one seen and one hidden. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. He leaned down, his voice dripping with venom. "Do you know who owns the deeds to half the businesses in this city? Do you know whose signature keeps the economy running?" Henry's lips curved into a small, almost pitying smile. "Do you know," he said softly, "who owns your company's debts?" Daniel blinked. The words struck him like a blow. Henry didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Because in that one sentence, Daniel realized something chilling. This wasn't just a bank manager. This was someone who had been watching, waiting, quietly holding the strings of his empire. The crowd stirred. Whispers grew louder. Some were recording on their phones now, emboldened by Henry's defiance. Daniel's image, the untouchable, all-powerful CEO, was cracking before their eyes. And then, the piercing wail of an ambulance siren cut through the tension outside. Henry's gaze dropped to his niece, who was growing paler by the second. Time was running out. "This isn't over," Daniel growled. Henry's voice was cold, final. "No, it's only just begun." As paramedics rushed in, the stage was set for a war that would expose secrets darker than anyone in that bank could imagine. And Daniel Reed was about to learn that he had picked a fight with the wrong family. The wail of the ambulance grew louder until red lights flooded the bank's glass walls. 2 paramedics rushed in, pushing a stretcher, their expressions tightening as they saw the pale, trembling woman clutching her stomach. Gasps filled the room as she was gently lifted onto the stretcher, her weak hands clutching Henry's sleeve until the very last moment. "Uncle, don't leave me," she whispered. Henry bent close, his silver hair brushing her cheek. "I'll be there," he promised softly. "No matter what." She nodded weakly before the paramedics whisked her away. The heavy glass doors closed behind them, but the weight inside the bank did not lift. Daniel stood there, chest heaving, fists clenched. His jaw tightened as the murmurs around him grew louder. Customers shook their heads, whispers hissing like venom. "Did you see what he did?" He pushed her. "And she's pregnant." Daniel's glare swept across the room, silencing some, but not all. For the first time, he realized his iron grip on perception was slipping. Henry straightened, adjusting his suit with deliberate calm. "You should go to her," he said quietly. Daniel snorted. "She'll be fine. She always is." The words stung Henry like acid. He had heard those same dismissive tones before, decades ago, from another man who thought women were fragile toys meant for display. And just like that, the memories clawed back to him, unbidden, unwanted. It was 30 years earlier. Henry was younger then, though already wealthy beyond imagination. He had watched his sister, his only family, fall in love with a man who promised her the world. But that man had been poison. Behind closed doors, he controlled her, humiliated her, broke her spirit piece by piece. Henry had begged her to leave, but she refused. "He loves me," she had whispered, her voice trembling. "He just loses his temper sometimes." A year later, she was gone, dead. The cause on paper was an accident. But Henry had always known the truth. Abuse had killed her. And the man responsible? He had vanished, shielded by wealth, protected by silence. Henry had sworn then that he would never let another woman in his family suffer the same fate. Not his niece. Not anyone. Now, standing in the bank lobby with Daniel Reed's smirk daring him to act, Henry felt the weight of that old promise burning in his chest. "Do you know why I let you marry her?" Henry asked suddenly. Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "Because I'm rich, powerful, and she was lucky to have me?" A cold smile tugged at Henry's lips. "No, I let you marry her because I wanted to see how long it would take before your mask slipped. I wanted you to think you'd won. But I've been watching you from the beginning." Daniel's face hardened. "What are you talking about?" "You remind me of someone," Henry said softly. "A man who thought money could erase cruelty. A man who thought he could hurt my family and walk away." Daniel's smirk faltered. Henry leaned in, his voice lowering to a deadly whisper. "That man was my sister's husband. And you? You are just like him." The words hit Daniel like a fist. His arrogance wavered. He had spent years crafting the perfect image, confident, untouchable, envied. But in Henry's eyes, he wasn't powerful. He was predictable. He was small. Daniel forced a laugh, though it rang hollow. "You're insane. You think you can scare me with stories from the past." Henry's eyes gleamed. "Stories? No, Daniel. I don't tell stories. I end them." The bank lobby fell into absolute silence. Daniel's breath quickened, anger rising to cover the fear clawing at his chest. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done for this city, for this economy. You don't know the deals I've made." Henry tilted his head, studying him with quiet disdain. "Oh, I know, Daniel. I know more than you think. I know about the bribes you paid to cover up scandals. I know about the employees who disappeared after uncovering your fraud. And I know," his voice sharpened, "about the deal you struck last year that nearly bankrupted this bank." Daniel froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because Henry wasn't guessing. He knew. The whispers grew louder around them. Phones were still raised, recording. The perfect CEO image Daniel had built for years was crumbling in real time, in front of strangers who would carry the story far beyond these walls. "Who told you that?" Daniel hissed. Henry stepped closer, his voice low and cold. "I don't need anyone to tell me. Because I'm the one who approved the bailout that saved you. I'm the one who made sure your empire didn't collapse in a single night. And you never even knew whose hand kept you alive. Daniel staggered back a step, the blood draining from his face. For the first time in his life, he realized the truth. He wasn't the most powerful man in the room. Henry was. But Henry wasn't finished. He looked Daniel dead in the eyes and said, "Now it's time you pay your debt. And believe me, Daniel, you won't be paying in money." The antiseptic scent of the hospital burned Daniel's nose as he paced the waiting room, his expensive shoes clicking against the tiled floor. His suit, tailored immaculate, now looked out of place against the harsh white walls and the nervous families sitting with hope and fear. Henry sat in the corner, perfectly calm, as though he belonged more to the silence than to the chaos. His eyes were fixed on the closed doors of the emergency ward where his niece was being treated. Daniel couldn't stand it. The quiet, the waiting, and Henry's unshakable calm. He turned suddenly, his voice sharp. "Don't look at me like that. She'll be fine. She always is." Henry didn't blink. "She's not fine. She hasn't been fine for years." Daniel's jaw clenched. He hated that tone, measured, controlled, heavy with truth. "You don't know what goes on between us," he snapped. "Marriage isn't perfect. Couples fight. That doesn't mean anything." Henry's eyes narrowed. A fight doesn't leave bruises that don't fade. A fight doesn't break someone's spirit until they no longer recognize themselves in the mirror. Daniel's chest tightened, anger bubbling up to mask the unease crawling inside him. "You think you're so righteous, so noble, but you're just an old man hiding behind a desk. I built my empire from nothing. I clawed my way up while men like you sat in their cushioned chairs and watched." Henry rose slowly, his height suddenly intimidating, his presence filling the room like a storm gathering. "From nothing," he repeated softly. "No, Daniel. You built your empire on lies, on cruelty, on the suffering of people too small to fight back. And now those people have a voice. My voice." Daniel swallowed hard but forced a laugh. "You think you can scare me with threats? My lawyers would crush you before you blink." Henry's lips curved into a cold smile. "I'm not suing you, Daniel. I'm exposing you." Daniel's stomach dropped. Before he could respond, the emergency room doors swung open. A doctor stepped out, his face weary but steady. "She and the baby are stable," he said. Relief flickered across Daniel's features, only to vanish when the doctor's gaze landed squarely on Henry. "But she asked to see you. Only you." The words sliced through Daniel's pride like a blade. His fist tightened. "She's my wife. She should be asking for me." The doctor didn't flinch. She was very clear. Henry nodded once and walked past Daniel without another glance. Daniel stood frozen, humiliation scorching through him as the door closed behind Henry. Inside the sterile hospital room, Henry found his niece lying pale against white sheets. Her eyes lit with relief when she saw him. "Uncle," she whispered weakly, tears slipping down her cheeks. He took her hand gently. "I'm here." She shook her head, voice trembling. I can't do this anymore. I thought I could handle it, thought love would change him. But he's only gotten worse. I was so wrong." Henry squeezed her hand. "No more silence. You've suffered long enough." Her lips trembled. "But he'll destroy me if I leave. He'll take everything, my home, my baby." Henry leaned closer, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "He won't take anything. Not while I breathe." She looked at him with wide, searching eyes. "But how?" Henry's jaw tightened. "Because Daniel Reed thinks he owns the world. But he doesn't know the world he lives in belongs to me." Back in the waiting room, Daniel was pacing when his phone buzzed. He snatched it up, irritation dripping from his movements. But as he read the email flashing across his screen, the color drained from his face. It was a message from his CFO. Urgent, trading halted. Stock value down 47% in 2 hours. Investors panicking. Need immediate direction. Daniel's heart thudded. He quickly dialed, his voice a hiss. "What do you mean halted? That's impossible. The board wouldn't." But the voice on the other end cut him off. "Sir, it's not the board. Someone bought out our debts. Overnight. Every single one. Whoever it is, they own you now. Daniel froze. The phone slipped slightly in his grip. His mind raced, but a horrifying thought wormed its way in. Slowly, almost unwillingly, his gaze lifted across the room, where Henry had just stepped out of the hospital ward, calm as ever, adjusting his cufflinks. Daniel's blood ran cold. Henry caught his eye, and for the briefest second, the corner of his mouth tilted upward. Not in triumph, not in cruelty, but in warning. Daniel realized with bone-deep terror. His empire wasn't collapsing by accident. It was being dismantled, piece by piece, by the very man standing before him. Daniel's hands trembled as he lowered his phone. The weight of the words from his CFO still rang in his ears. Someone bought out our debts. Overnight. His empire, built on years of ruthless ambition, intimidation, and corruption, was crumbling in a matter of hours. And the man responsible was standing not 10 feet away, calm as a mountain in a storm. Henry adjusted his jacket, his silver watch glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Rough call," he asked, his tone casual, almost amused. Daniel's jaw tightened. "What did you do?" Henry stepped closer, his voice steady and deliberate. "I told you, Daniel. I've been watching you for a long time. Every deal, every debt, every time you used power to crush someone weaker, I kept track. You thought you owned this city, but you were borrowing everything. Borrowing against a system you never understood." Daniel's face twisted with fury. You sabotaged me. You think you can just erase everything I built?" Henry's gaze hardened. "Erase it? No. I'm giving you a choice. Something no one ever gave my sister when she was trapped in her marriage." Daniel blinked. "What are you talking about?" Henry's eyes darkened, his voice laced with memory. "My sister. Your wife's mother. She married a man just like you. Arrogant. Cruel. He destroyed her piece by piece until she had nothing left. And when she died, he walked away without consequence. I swore that day I'd never let it happen again. And now his eyes narrowed like blades. Now it's you." Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came. The weight of Henry's stare pinned him in place. Henry continued, his tone cutting like glass. "Here's your choice. Walk away from her, leave her and the child unharmed, and I will let you keep some of what you've built. Not all, but enough for you to start over. Defy me, keep her under your thumb, and I will burn every last corner of your empire to the ground until your name is nothing but ash." Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. The thought of losing control over his wife, the woman he had molded, silenced, bent to his will, ignited rage inside him. But the thought of losing his empire, the billions he had clawed from the world, made his stomach twist in fear. "You think you can threaten me?" Daniel hissed. "I still have allies. I still have power." Henry tilted his head, amused by the defiance. "Then call them." Daniel froze, because he already knew deep down that those allies had only ever been loyal to his wealth. And now, with his debts bought out, his stock plummeting, his power bleeding away by the hour, he had nothing left to offer them. Henry took a step closer, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Look around you, Daniel. You're not untouchable anymore. You're alone." Daniel's throat tightened, but pride refused to let him yield. "And if I refuse? If I fight you?" Henry's calm gaze pierced through him. "Then I'll destroy you in ways you can't imagine. You'll watch your empire collapse piece by piece. You'll watch the world turn against you. And when there's nothing left, you'll realize you never had power. Only the illusion of it." The words sank into Daniel like poison. He staggered back, trying to breathe, trying to cling to the arrogance that had carried him for years. But for the first time, he felt it slipping from him like sand through his fingers. From the ward behind them, faint cries of a newborn pierced the tense silence. Both men turned their heads instinctively. Daniel's heart lurched. The baby had come early. Henry's expression softened as he listened, a flicker of emotion breaking through his stoic mask. "Do you hear that, Daniel?" he said quietly. "That's your child. Innocent. Unbroken. Still untouched by your cruelty. You can choose to protect that life, or you can choose to destroy it, like you've destroyed everything else. Daniel's hands shook. He wanted to shout, to lash out, to claw back the control that was slipping away. But the cries of the child cut deeper than Henry's words ever could. Henry stepped closer, his voice final, inescapable. This is the last deal you'll ever make. Choose her. Choose your child. Or lose everything. Daniel's lips parted, but no answer came. Because for the first time in his life, he realized he was no longer the one making the rules. Henry was. The cries of the newborn echoed through the sterile hospital halls like a fragile hymn. Every sound pierced Daniel's chest, sharper than a knife. He stood frozen, staring at the double doors of the maternity ward as if they were prison gates. Henry, calm as ever, adjusted his cufflinks. His gaze was fixed on Daniel, not with hatred, but with judgment, with a kind of patience that comes from waiting decades to strike. "This is it," Henry said softly. "The choice you can't buy your way out of." Daniel's throat was dry. His voice cracked as he tried to summon the arrogance that had once been his shield. "She's my wife. That child, it's mine. I won't just walk away." Henry's eyes hardened. "No, Daniel. They're not possessions. They're people. And you've treated them like trophies in your empire of glass. But glass shatters." Daniel's fists clenched. His mind raced. "Walk away, and I lose control. Stay, and I lose everything else." The thought made him dizzy. For so long, he had believed he was untouchable, that the world bent to him. But here, in the quiet gravity of Henry's gaze, he felt small, like a boy pretending to be king. The doctor reappeared, holding a clipboard. "She's asking for a child," he said, looking at Henry before his eyes shifted reluctantly to Daniel. "She doesn't want you in the room." The words gutted Daniel. His wife, his silent, obedient wife, had spoken against him at last. Henry's voice was steady, but sharp as glass. "You've already lost her, Daniel. The only thing left to decide is whether you'll drag her and that child down with you, or let them rise without you." Daniel's breathing quickened. He turned away, pacing like a caged animal. His mind screamed for a way out, but every path ended with Henry's shadow looming larger. Finally, he spun back, his face red with fury and desperation. "Fine," he spat. "You want me gone? You want me to walk away? Then say it. Say it to my face. Tell me I'm nothing." Henry stepped forward until his eyes bored into Daniel's. "You are nothing. Without her, without that child, without the illusion of power you've stolen from others, you are nothing but a coward in a suit." The words shattered what little pride Daniel had left. His knees wobbled. For a fleeting second, the weight of his sins pressed down on him, heavier than all his riches. And then silence. Daniel looked away, shoulders slumping. The fight drained from him like air from a punctured balloon. He gave a bitter laugh, hollow and sharp. "You think you've won, old man. But you've just taken away the only thing that made me worth anything." Henry's expression softened, not in forgiveness, but in pity. "No, Daniel. You did that yourself." The doctor cleared his throat gently. "She's ready to see you now," he said to Henry. Henry nodded, then turned to Daniel. His voice carried finality, like a verdict passed down. "Leave this hospital. Leave her. Leave the child. If I ever hear of you near them again, I won't just dismantle your empire. I'll bury it so deep history forgets your name." Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came. He looked into Henry's unflinching eyes and realized the truth. The war was over, and he had lost. Slowly, with the weight of a ruined man, he turned and walked out. No cameras, no headlines, just silence. The kind of silence that followed a kingdom's fall. Inside the maternity room, Henry stepped quietly to the bedside. His niece cradled the tiny bundle in her arms, her face pale but glowing with the fragile light of hope. Tears streamed down her cheeks when she saw him. "Uncle," she whispered. "He's gone." Henry nodded. "He won't hurt you again." Her shoulders shook as she wept, relief pouring out after years of silent suffering. She held the baby closer, kissing the child's soft forehead. "I thought I'd never be free." Henry knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "You are free now. And you're not alone. You never were. The baby stirred, letting out a tiny cry, and Henry felt something stir in him too, something he hadn't felt since his sister was alive. A second chance. He placed his hand over his niece's, steady and firm. This child will never know fear. Not while I live. That is my promise. She looked at him with tearful eyes, nodding. Outside, the sun was rising over the city skyline, painting the sky with hues of fire and gold. Somewhere in that sprawling city, Daniel Reed walked alone. No empire, no family, no legacy. Only shadows. But in that hospital room, a new life had begun. One built not on fear, but on strength. On love. On the quiet, unyielding promise of a man who had finally kept his vow. Henry looked out the window, the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to smile. The cycle ends here, he whispered. And it did.